Hey everyone, it's Ryzen, and welcome to my review of Persona 3 FES The Journey. I'll probably mention the answer as well, but I do plan on doing a separate review for that. My notes are actually in front of me, so if I look down, that's why, but they're out of frame. They're on my laptop, of course. I've also got two lights going, so let me know what you think of the lighting. I think it's better, apart from the shadows. But, I don't know, just let me know what you think of the setup. But before I get into the review proper, I do want to take a few minutes to discuss a comment I got on one of my older reviews about spoilers. The reason why my reviews have spoilers, those of you that have watched me for a while would know that I used to do reviews during the credit sequences of the game. So obviously, I'm expecting you to have watched the entire LP, which is exactly what I did with the more in-depth reviews. I just wanted to talk more about it, basically. I don't have a problem doing spoiler tags. I don't have a problem accommodating that. But really, these reviews were meant to be watched at the end of the Let's Play, which is why they're posted at the end of the Let's Play on the playlist. But I'm going to try a new format because of that. I really don't have an issue accommodating that. So I won't do any spoilers for any section up to the plot section. I will do a very brief overview of the plot. Well, very brief review. Very generic review. Probably like 30 seconds to a minute. And then I will go into spoilers. I'll mention it and I'll use an annotation link to skip you ahead to either the score or the next section. I haven't decided yet. But for the Tales of the Abyss reviews and the Odin Sphere reviews, I have put annotation on over the beginning of those videos that they're spoiler filled. I did put a little annotation link to skip the plot section, although there's still spoilers throughout those reviews. So just as a heads up there. So now let's get into the review proper. Start with the history with the game and the initial thoughts. This was Persona 3 FES was an impulse buy from GameStop, if I recall correctly. And it was before the portable version came out, but obviously after the original version came out. I had no idea that there was multiple versions of the game. I had literally no clue about that. I just picked it up, looked at the back, thought the fusion idea was cool, so picked it up. Admittedly, it did have a very slow beginning, which kind of turned me off, but I'm used to games having slow beginnings, so I usually... It takes a lot for me to not finish a game to stop playing. So, got through the slow beginning, and once I had access to Fusion, I wasted countless hours experimenting with it for really no reason. It was just such fun to do the Fusion mechanics. I mean, I would just spend hours fusing, well, throughout the course of the game. The dungeon crawling did get annoying, but the nice balance of the social aspect of the game really did help make up for that, which was quite enjoyable. So when I got bored with one thing, I would go do the other thing. And the plot was intriguing enough for me to be interested. I liked the characters. And definitely found the game worth the 100+ hours I put into it in my first playthrough. Unfortunately, I didn't really play the game again for a long time because it was so long, but I don't think I played it again until the LP, actually. Well, not the LP, but the the testing for the LP. But after I did finish the journey, I did immediately go play the answer. Wow, I hated the answer. I did finish it, and I will LP it, but it was bad. It took everything I liked about the journey and threw it out the window. I don't know what they were thinking with it. I don't understand why it wasn't like Final Fantasy IV The Interlude, where it was just, 2, 3, 4 hours, just a little brief epilogue. No level grinding, no persona fusion. They just give you personas and that's it. And you fight very easy bosses and get a short plot. Because, yeah, I don't know what they were thinking making it a short plot with 30 hours of grinding. That's really stupid. But whatever. The graphics of the game are good. I mean, they're nothing outstanding, but they're good. I mean, they're not going to match Final Fantasy games at the time, but they're pretty good for what they are. I especially like the animations. They're very colorful while being brief. I like the character designs. They did a good job, despite being limited to school uniforms for the main cast, of differentiating them enough that they stood out. Yeah, it doesn't really make sense because, I mean, would a school really allow you to customize your uniform like that? Probably not, but I'm glad they did it because it would have been really weird if everybody was just wearing the exact same thing. Tartarus is boring. It's just long, narrow hallways. It's Final Fantasy 13 syndrome. No, I guess really Final Fantasy 10 started that whole thing for Final Fantasy games. But yeah, it's boring. Every 20, 30 floors they change the wallpaper, whoop-de-doo. But it's still long, narrow hallways. It's annoying. The town is interesting looking. I wish there was more to it. I wish there was more to do and more to look at, but for the areas that you have access to, they do look great. Enemy designs are interesting, but there are way too many palette swaps. This may be the worst game for palette swaps ever. No, it's not that bad. Xenoblade Chronicles, Final Fantasy 12, and I think Chronicles X, actually, which I haven't finished, have far more palette swaps in this game, but there's still an inexcusable number of palette swaps. There's really not that many different types of enemies. The anime cutscenes are well done. They look good. They're used sparingly enough that they don't become annoying. And overall, like I said, the graphics are good. Not outstanding, but good. So I'll give them an 8 out of 10. The music is different. I'm not going to say it's bad, but it is different. I mean, I will say that the music is fitting for the modern setting that it's set in. Unlike, say, Xenoblade Chronicles X, which I've been playing recently, where the music makes no sense. It's totally out of place. I don't know what they were thinking. But here, it's good for the setting that it's in. I'm not a big fan of rap or hip-hop, but it's nothing unbearable for me to listen to in this game. And if nothing else, the music certainly stands out. And the non-vocal tracks are excellent. Namely the final boss theme and, well, some of the boss themes. Particularly when you fight certain villains. I love that boss theme. So I would give it a 6.5 out of 10. But if you enjoy rap or hip-hop, you'd probably like it more than I did. Oh, and one other thing I should mention is the balance of the audio, vocals, and sound effects are all pretty good. And I know that's like, well, duh. Well, having played Xenoblade Chronicles X recently, that is apparently a novelty. Where, I mean, that game just blasts music all over the cutscenes. You can't hear anything anyone is saying. It's ridiculous, and there's no way to adjust the audio. Persona 3 FES, I think you can adjust the audio levels, but even without that, the audio levels are great. So, that's good. But yeah, like I said, 6 out of 5. 6 out of 5. That is a strange score, Ryzen. 6.5 out of 10 for me. But again, if you like rap or hip hop, you'd probably like it more. So you'd probably go up to a 7 or an 8 even. But it's just not my cup of tea. So I'm going to start with a very general overview of what I thought of the plot. And then I'll get into spoilers. The plot has excellent character development. It does a great job with its themes. The villains are okay, except for one. And the pacing is terrible. I don't know how the pacing can be so bad. It's literally the worst pacing I've seen in any story. And the setting is different for a JRPG, and the story is fairly dark. Fairly well told, but it's just not around very much, unfortunately. Both because of the way the calendar system of the game, and just poor pacing in general for the writing. So, those are my general thoughts of the plot. I'm going to be doing spoilers now, so there'll be an annotation link to skip to the score or the next section. I don't know, whatever I decide. Okay, spoiler time. Strength of the plot is its characters. Every character develops in one way or another, or they have some backstory or something. I mean, obviously some characters get more than others. Junpei and Yukari. They are the two most developed characters in the game. As such, they are also my favorite characters in the game. I do like Yukari a little more than Junpei, but Junpei is an awesome character. Even Koromaru develops. I mean, it just happens off screen before he joins the party, but I mean, that's awesome. I mean, when you can have the dog develop, you did something right. I mean, virtually every character is related to the theme in some way. I suppose I should mention what the themes are. I've heard people call the main theme, death. It's an aspect of the theme. I don't think it's the actual theme. Really, I think there's two main themes of the game. First is acceptance of loss. I think that's the main central theme of the game. Virtually every character loses somebody throughout the course of the game or before the game started. You know, from the main character's parents dying to Yukari's dad dying, Mitsuru's dad dying, Junpei losing his father to alcoholism, and then, of course, losing Chidori, Koromaru losing his master, Ken losing his mother, even Shinji, you know, losing control of his own power and losing faith in himself, Akihiko losing his sister. I guess is a little trickier, but really her story revolves around her guilt of really taking away somebody else's life in her mind. Her cursing somebody, essentially. So her loss would be, well, the blood on her hands, I suppose. Her loss of innocence, I guess, in a way. And all these characters have to accept their loss and move on in some way or another, and they all do. Except for Strega, Takaya and Jen, namely, who lost their childhood, are not able to move on from it, and thus that turns them into the people that they are. Where all they want to do is, well, if they can't get over their loss, they might as well just then, clearly in their mind, no one can, so the life is not worth living. They're a very good way of illustrating the opposite end of that theme. I do think the other theme is making the most out of life, and the social link aspect covers that very well, where a lot of characters, well, where you're encouraged to make all these friends, because you never know how long you're going to have to live. So you might as well make the most out of it. And that ties into the main theme as well. And also a lot of social links deal with loss as well. Like, I think it's Mamoru, the star link, loses his childhood, has to grow up. But I do like his epilogue where he figures out he actually can still make the most out of his life because he can actually still do the things he loves, even though he has to balance it with his adulthood, life. So I'm really glad they added that epilogue scene for him. But yeah, Nozomi has to get over the loss of his brother, although I hate Nozomi. But still, he deals with the theme of loss and making the most out of his life and doing what he wants to do to be his own person. And obviously, there's another theme of friendship in the game as well. Well, that's more prevalent in the answer than it is in the journey, but that is a theme as well. I don't think it's a central theme, it's just kind of a minor theme throughout Persona 3. And obviously, Chidori is the big exception for Strega, where she actually does find a reason to live, and ironically, it kind of she ends up sacrificing her life because of that. Because of how strongly her connection formed with Junpei. The plot itself does suffer from some horrendous pacing. It's really bad. You will go months without learning anything in game time, at least as far as the calendar is concerned, where, nothing will happen. I mean, look at the beginning of the game. You learn very quickly about the Dark Hour and this tower, and you're exploring it for no reason, and that remains true for... In fact, you're exploring Tartarus for no reason for 99% of the game until the very end. Really stupid. I mean, there is the brief thing with Fuka, but other than that, you have no reason to go into this tower. You know nothing about it, you learn nothing about it, and it's ridiculously poorly paced. I mean, literally all it is final boss at top. Kill it. Okay. I'm stunned how bad it is. I mean, after the beginning part, it takes you forever just to learn that you should kill these 12 shadows. And then, of course, there's the big plot twist about it. But, that takes... You're killing these big shadows on the full moon, and I think the first 3 you kill... I think it's the first 3. It's at least the first 2, but I think it's the first 3. You kill for virtually no reason. You have no idea why you're doing it. And then finally the game tells you, okay, this is your goal. And then really nothing changes in the plot until the big twist. And then the plot dies off again after the big twist. It finally gets that momentum and then the pacing goes to crap again. Until the whole thing with Ryoji happens. And then finally we build to the climax of the game. The pacing is terrible. And even a lot of social links, the pacing is terrible. How long does it take to learn the main conflict of Nozomi's link, or Mamoru's link, or Keisuke's link? Well, Keisuke, actually, we get hints of it early on. But Baby's link, for example, it shouldn't take you till rank 6, 7, 8 to get a conflict here. That should be introduced after rank 3 or 4. Because, the first couple ranks should be introducing the character, and then we move into the conflict. And instead, sometimes we get 5 or 6 ranks of introducing the character, and then we get to the conflict. Chidori is one of the best social links in the game because her conflict is introduced immediately. The whole shyness thing, but a lot of them aren't. A lot of them are very poorly done. Even Yukari's social link, it takes forever just to get the whole conflict with her mother. Let's talk about the villains now. I've already mentioned how Strega's excellent means of tying into the themes. And Chidori's also excellent with helping to develop Junpei's character. And her own development is great. And, her death scene is very tragic. But it is very thematically appropriate. Takaya and Jin obviously fit the theme of acceptance of loss very well in that they don't accept their loss and can't move on from it. And thus they're very bitter and angry at the world. Jin is more of a generic lapdog for Takaya, but Takaya is an excellent villain. I wish he was around more. I wish he got more screen time. His voice acting is fantastic. It's one of the best voice acting performances I've heard in a video game. It's awesome. He's great. He really brings life to the character. Unfortunately, there is one villain that I don't understand why they decided to do this. The Akutsuki twist. Akutsuki betrays your party, right? Okay. He does this and then immediately dies, making it completely pointless. On top of which, I mean, would the plot have been any different if Akutsuki was just wrong about killing the 12 Shadows? Not really. Nothing really would change. I mean, the foreshadowing for it, because there is foreshadowing, it's almost non-existent. It's the Pharaoh's talk where he says, there's 3 flowers in an opposing garden, which is Strega, and 1 in your own garden, which is Akutsuki. But that could have been anybody. I mean, would it have been... I mean, what if, I don't know, not Koromaru. Yeah, Koromaru. No, I mean, what if Yukari was the one in your own garden and she betrayed you? Back to the twist is the same. Or Fuka, or anybody in the party. I mean, the fact that it's Akutsuki, okay, really doesn't change anything. It could have been anyone with the same effect. On top of which, the whole Aigis suddenly being able to take on the entire party is ridiculous. I mean, you want to talk about a cutscene incompetence trope. I mean, that's it taken to the extreme. I'm sorry, Aigis should not be able to take on the party 7-on-1, especially when one of them is the main character who is stated to be the most powerful character in the game. Particularly by the end, but even before that, the guy has the wildcard power. I mean, are you telling me Aigis is stronger than the wildcard power? No way. No way, that makes no sense. That should have been rewritten that Akutsuki laid a trap for them. Not Aigis just goes limiter off and beats them. No, that's stupid. That is so unbelievably stupid, I don't have words for it. But yeah, I mean, Akutsuki... I mean, relate him to the theme. I can't. I'm trying. Does he lose anything that he fails to accept? No, not really. He certainly doesn't care about making the most out of life. He's just a generic, power-hungry, I will be king of the world villain. Which didn't even seem to fit his character before that, so... You know, he goes from, I'm this guy that tries to be funny and fails, to, I am egomaniac who will take over the world! Okay. And I know he's wearing a mask with the whole I'm pretending to joke thing. But the twist itself has nothing to do with the themes of the game and really doesn't add anything to it. At the very least, if that's going to happen, he should have been the main antagonist from that point on. Not he gets killed by Mitsuru's dad within 5 minutes of being revealed as a villain. And then they bring Strega back, which I like that they bring Strega back because they're far more interesting. But it's just really bizarre. I don't understand that. The point of the twist. It seems so pointless to me. I mean, I don't hate the twist. I just don't think it adds anything to the game. There's also Nyx, and I guess Ryoji / Pharos. I mean, Pharos does a good job of illustrating the making the most out of life theme, because he actually is able to make friends with Minato and makes his life worth living to a degree, despite the fact that he's not, you know, really human, which leads to Ryoji actually being like how he is, and why he offers them that choice towards the end of the game of, you know, live peacefully for a few months, or try and fight and die painfully. Because in his mind, the value of life is so much that living peacefully even for a few months is worth it over fighting an unwinnable battle in his mind. But Nyx has got to be like the most lame villain in the game. Uh, I like her design, but she's just a generic god of death that doesn't have any character whatsoever. Just god of death that kills people. Okay? Plus, it's really hard to take seriously. And I know this is my fault more so before all the tropes of RPGs I've played, but oh, it's a god that you can't kill. Yeah, sure it is. I didn't buy that for a second. But they did do a good job of creating that sense of foreboding. But I mean, that trope's been done so many times of fighting a god at the end and winning that it's hard to take it seriously when they actually build up a being like that is really invincible. But that's just more so my fault for all the plots I've experienced. But yeah, Nyx is lame. I'm glad the final boss is Ryoji, but yeah, the whole thing with Nyx. I mean, I like the final battle with it, the scripted thing with it, but I don't like the character itself. I think it's a very boring, lame character. So overall, the plot is good, thematically well done with some good character development, especially among the protagonists. All of them are I think, very well done with their own character arcs and resolutions. Except for, well, even the main character. I mean, even though he's a silent protagonist, you can still see the development in him, thanks largely to that ending and all the social link stuff you have to do, how he relates to the themes of the game. But the pacing is horrendous. I mean, there's just too much of nothing going on for far too long, whether it be in the social links or the overall plot itself. They do kind of make up for it with the focus on character development during some of these parts, but I don't think it's enough. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the resolution scenes, but, I'd like some plot advancement here at some point or another. But, regardless of that, I'm going to give the plot a 7.5 out of 10. I do think, overall, the plot is good. I just don't think it's around enough. It's certainly better than a lot of other JRPG plots. Well, Persona Fusion can lead to a ridiculous amount of combinations for you to experiment with, which is certainly interesting. Social links not only fit with the theme of the game, but they allow you to take a break from dungeon crawling, which is awesome. Being able to switch personas on the fly really encourages you to have a whole bunch of different combinations of personas to deal with different situations. And that's awesome. Unfortunately, the battle system itself is meh. I wouldn't say it's terrible, but it's not good either. It has major, major flaws. First of all, it's a turn-based game. Why am I only controlling one character? And I know what they were going for. You're just the leader, therefore you're not them. That's stupid. I'm sorry, that's stupid. There is no reason why in real life I wouldn't be able to turn to somebody and say, use a fire spell. That's really stupid. But even if I buy that argument, which I don't, it doesn't change the fact that it is incredibly inconvenient to have to rely on AI. Yes, the game has tactics, but you can't even change them on the fly. I mean, that's something Final Fantasy 13 got right. And I hated Final Fantasy 13. But you could change tactics on the fly. They were called paradigms, but they're the same thing. They're AI scripts. You could change them on the fly in the middle of a turn. You didn't have to wait for your own turn to come up to do it. In fact, you were encouraged to do that because of the turn bar refresh rate every, I think, 2 paradigm shifts in that game. Here, if I get charmed or confused or something's done to my character that I can't even control him, I can't change tactics. That's so stupid. Really? Like, I can't change the AI of my characters because my character is disabled? On top of which, you're going to have status ailments that disable the only character I can control? You might as well just come in, have somebody take the controller from me, throw it against the window, and then count to, I don't know, 10, 20 seconds, and then go get the controller and hand it back to me. Thanks for removing all of my control, Atlas. I appreciate that. The tactic system isn't even a cure-all for all the problems. Yes, you can prevent Mitsuru from doing her Marin Karin spam by sending her to full assault or knockdown. But each of those tactics has limitations. You can't change them on the fly, like I said. And they're not a cure-all for all problems. You set Mitsuru to full assault, for example, she might use Mind Charge, which is one of the most useless abilities in the game. Why would I want to double my damage when I could just attack twice? And for those of you that don't know, or are going off of other Shin Megami Tensei games, Mind Charge or Power Charge or Persona 3 do double damage. They do not do 2.5, they do not do triple. They do double, I've tested it. Which makes them both useless. Outside of very specific situations. And if you set her to knockdown, she'll only either attack for a knockdown, or she'll cast Bufudine if they're weak to ice, but she won't just cast it if they're not weak to it. There's also the problem that the AI characters never want to use their Moss spells unless you've not scanned the enemy, which is really stupid. I like how you can scan every enemy without taking up a turn, much like the Libra skill in Final Fantasy 13. I like that. That's awesome. That's a cool feature. And then you can just, once you've scanned them, you can just look at their stats at any time and see their weaknesses and stuff, and that's cool. That allows you to sort of gauge what you're fighting and go back and fuse better personas for it. There is artificial difficulty in the game, particularly with the whole leader death thing. If you're going to have leader death, game over, you can't have instant death spells. I'm sorry, but you can't. You cannot have the player be punished for something that he or she doesn't know is coming that leads to instant death and game over. Yes, you can be immune to instant death. But unless you're going to do that the entire way through the game, which you can't even do for quite some time, by the way, the best you can get is resistances early on, which is not immunity. Well, you can be walking around in Tartarus, and all of a sudden, instant death spell, you're dead. Because you didn't preempt an enemy, or the game decided to screw you over and cause you to miss. And the miss rate is obscene in the game. I hate missing to begin with. I don't understand why it's ever put into an RPG. All it's doing is delaying the game or getting you screwed over in a close battle for things that's not under your control. I mean, at least in Legend of Dragoon, if you messed up an addition, that's your fault. You mistimed it. Here it's just the game says, flipped a coin, came up miss, you get to miss. And as a result of that, you can end up getting killed by a low-level instant death spell or high-level instant death spell and lose 10, 20 minutes of progress or more for something you really had no control over. And it's just not fair. Especially when you have all these revival items, characters with revival spells. There's no reason why they can't just revive you. Just have them be able to revive you. I don't understand why that doesn't happen. Persona 4 fixes this with the whole they take the big hit for you. I still wish it was just like a normal game, but whatever, it's better in that game. Yeah, there's homunculus, or homunculi, I think is the plural, but you can easily run out of those, and it's random whether you get them or not. You either have to farm gems for them, which takes time, or you have to find them in chests, which again is luck-based. I usually had enough to where it was never a problem, but if you get hosed on the RNG, you can get screwed, and that's nonsense. The damage formula also sucks. For those of you that don't know, the primary factor of your damage in Persona 3 is your level compared to the enemy's level. If you're above the enemy's level, you get a damage boost. If you're below the enemy's level, you get a damage penalty. And they get a damage boost on you. The damage penalty also applies to them if you're a higher level than them. Now, because the main character is always going to be a higher level than everybody, he's the best damage dealer. That has other problems. I'll get into that in a minute. But your equipment means nothing. And I am not kidding. It means almost nothing. Going from 100 defense, or not 100 defense, 100 attack power on a weapon to 450 attack power on a weapon might increase your damage by 50 points. Maybe 100 if you're lucky. It's negligible. Whereas leveling up just a few levels over the level of the enemy will have the same effect. I don't understand what they were thinking. Why have equipment at all? The only purpose to equipment is their secondary effects. So once you get a good secondary effect, you'll never change your equipment again. Unless you want to change their outfit for whatever reason. Which I do think is cool that some outfits do change their appearance. But the fact that equipment is useless is just so stupid. I mean, accessories are good because of the effects they have. But armor, shoes, weapon mean nothing. I mean, for your party members, you're just going to use a fusion weapon. Because they're infinitely better than anything else. Because you can actually guarantee what the effect is. So you can get rid of weaknesses for everybody except for Ken and Koromaru. Who are only weak to instant death anyway, which is not as debilitating for them as it would be for you. Unless you know certain parts of the game where there are no instant death spells. Like I do. Yeah, so weapon fusion's overpowered, for one, because of this. And I think the game expects you to kind of upgrade your fusion weapons over the course of the game. But there's no need to. Because upping your attack power does so little, it's like, well, what's the point? Also, because the main character is always a higher level, there's no point in you using buffs, debuffs, crowd control. Oh my god, crowd control is so useless in the game, it's laughable. This may be the worst crowd control I've seen in a JRPG. Final Fantasy VII is pretty bad too, but at least that had like Frog Song that was situationally useful. This has nothing. I mean, I used Charm, I think, a couple of times on really hard bosses, and that was it. Almost everything's immune to every status element. And if they're not, the hit percentage is so ridiculously low, you would never use it. But there's no point in having the main character heal. Maybe on hard, occasionally, but he's your best damage dealer. You're never going to want to use... I mean, if you're having the main character heal, you're underleveled, and you're hurting your efficiency severely. Because the amount of damage you can do compared to your party members is obscene. I mean, you'll be doing 400 damage when they'll be doing double-digit damage. And that's so stupid. All because of the level formula. I mean, if you stick with the same party members, okay, I guess you can kind of compensate for that. But then you're going to run into the problem of your party members getting hammered with their weaknesses, at least until levels 30s to 40s and on. And by then, if you've been switching your party members up, you might as well just continue to do it. There's no point. I mean, the main character will be so far ahead. There is a little bit of experience scaling, but not enough to make a difference. So your AI party members will be doing the things like buffing, debuffing, healing. No one will do crowd control instead of very, very, very minimal situations. So essentially, all you're doing is selecting your strongest attack or attack all. And that's another thing about the AI. They'll never, like I think I mentioned it, where they are allergic to their attack alls, even though they're more efficient. Yeah, they have slightly less accuracy, but it's negligible. And this brings me to the weakness system of the game, where you can knock down enemies and keep them knocked down forever so that they never get a turn. That's really overpowered. That shouldn't be in the game. They fixed that in Persona 4. Also, the fact that it can cost you your turn just to get up is stupid. Because again, I might as well have somebody take the controller from me, count to 10, and give it back to me. But the battle system relies on a gimmick, much like Final Fantasy XIII does. That gimmick is the all-out attack system. I don't like it. It is ridiculously overpowered. Every single battle, well, not every single one, but 90% of battles go like this. Finding a group of enemies. Knock them all down with their weakness. All out attack. Dead. You win. Move on. And if they're not dead, they're almost dead, and your party members finish them off. That's almost every battle. Outside of the boss battles that tend to not have weaknesses. Which is good, by the way, because you can't do that, or abuse that to them. Although there are ways to still get knockdowns, like with critical hits. And if you have Thunder Rain, you can just totally stun lock almost any enemy in the game. Because of the shock status. It gets boring after a while. I mean, it's like an FF13 where 99% of the battles rely on the stagger mechanic. Every single battle is stagger enemy, kill enemy. I don't like it when a mechanic is that enshrined in the battle system, or enshrined. Entrenched, I guess would be a better word. Where there's no variety to it. Not my favorite aspect of the battle system. Plus, I think it's just too overpowered. And again, level determines most of the damage that you do with it. Speaking of the boss battles, Atlas has fallen under the philosophy of just give them a lot of HP. Atlas, that doesn't make battles harder. It just makes it more tedious. There are so many boss battles that take way too damn long because they have so much HP. I mean, obviously the biggest criminal here is the Reaper, who has about 4,000 more HP than it should. I mean, really, it should only have about 1,000 HP at most. And that's pushing it. And the final boss having, what was it, 24,000? Something like that. Way too much. I'm sorry, but when your final boss can take 2 hours, if I'm not prepared, and even if I am prepared, an hour, you've screwed something up. Especially when said final boss is not even interesting. You know, nothing really changes about it. It's just spam most powerful attack over and over and over again for 1 to 2 hours. And that's so boring. I don't understand what they were thinking there. There's also the super boss, which is very poorly designed. I don't understand how you're expected to understand these rules or figure them out. And I know Atlas has done this repeatedly. That doesn't make it good game design. Just because they're too stupid to figure out that it's terrible game design doesn't make it not terrible game design. I mean, the Request 55 boss, how are you supposed to figure out any of those rules? The game doesn't tell you them. You don't know which rule you broke when you die. It is really stupid. I would very much like to know, without a walkthrough, how you are supposed to win that battle. Because trial and error doesn't work. Because you'll have no idea what you did wrong. And don't tell me, oh, use a walkthrough. That's poor game design. I shouldn't have to use a walkthrough. I should be able to figure it out on myself, or by myself, and be rewarded for that. Tartarus. The dungeon of the game is incredibly boring. It is a series of long, narrow hallways that are randomly generated. I mean, there's no, like, rooms to it. The tower itself makes no sense. And maybe that was the point, but it just seems like a lazy excuse to not design an interesting dungeon. It's boring, it's lame to explore, and there's really no reward for exploring it. Other than, oh, you get to level up. I mean, the chests are random too, so it's not like you're really encouraged to open chests all that much. Other than the fact that they're there. The number of palette swaps certainly don't help Tartarus' case either, for the enemies. Fortunately, there's the social link aspect of the game, which allows you to take a break from the monotonous features of the game, and there's the Persona Fusion aspect, again, which allows you to really experiment with different combinations of personas, and really get a sense of progression in the game, which goes a long way towards helping overcome the very weak battle system of the game. Not terrible, it's not unplayable by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not good either. Overall, I'm going to give the gameplay a 6 out of 10 because I do think the other aspects make up for the battle system. Yeah, I ranted a lot about the battle system just because I think it's so poorly done. I've seen worse, but it's pretty low on my list. But the complete package, I guess you could say, is an enjoyable experience. it comes together nicely with the Persona Fusion and social link aspect of the game, and then seeing how the personas function in battle. So overall, 6 out of 10. Replay value. Well, it's got a lot more replay value than Odin Sphere because of New Game Plus by default. It's always great for replay if you just want to blast your way through the game to experience the story again or whatnot, or whatever you want to do with New Game Plus. You just want to see how powerful you would be against early game enemies. I think almost every JRPG should have New Game Plus. It's such a cool feature to mess around with. There's really not too much point to it other than Request 55 in Persona 3, but it's cool to have the option. I do hate when games do that with New Game Plus, where there's only like one thing that's added to it, but it could be worse. I mean, obviously it's not going to be Chrono Trigger with the new endings and stuff, or even Eternal Sonata with the higher difficulty and the whole new equipment that completely changes who you're going to use in your party. That's awesome. I love Encore mode in Eternal Sonata. The sheer number of personas in the game, as well as the difficulty of doing a max social link run, really means you're going to have things left undone. So you're going to want to go back and replay it again sometime to do those things, to see those other social links, to fuse other personas. But the game is too long. I mean, on the box it says 90 plus hours. In my experience, it's more like over 100. That's too long to ask somebody to invest in the game unless they really like it. But if you do enjoy it, I mean, there is replay value to be had in this game. So I would give it a 7.5 out of 10 for the replay value, because it's a lot better than a lot of other JRPGs, because a lot of JRPGs are just like zeros, or very low on the list just because of some missable side quests or something. Persona 3 I actually do think gives you reasons to replay. As for the fun factor, well, the game's a blast to play. It's fun to experiment with personas. The battle system is flawed, but normal enemies die so quickly, you'll often not notice these flaws. So it's very fast-paced. And there's a real sense of progression when creating personas, as I said before. Makes the game very enjoyable to play. The social links are a nice alternative for grinding, so there's really a lot of variety in the game because of that. There's always something else for you to do. It helps the game avoid repetition, despite being so long. I mean, obviously every game is repetitious, but it's important how you get the player to not feel like it's repetition. And I think Persona 3 does an excellent job of not feeling repetitious. Though the game can annoy you with artificial difficulty at times. But it doesn't happen too often where it gets you killed. And you can save pretty often in the game, so not too bad. At least in the dungeon, you can save anytime you're on the first floor. I will say I wish there was more save points throughout the town, because it's really annoying to get stuck in these long-winded cutscenes without being able to save, because you had to wait till you got to the dorm at night, and you had to go through a long series of events to do that. That happened to me countless times during the LP. Maybe in the future I'll write down when these cutscenes are so that I can better plan things. But overall, I'd give it a 9 out of 10 because I think the game is awesome to play. I think it's a lot of fun. So the overall score and recommendation. Persona 3's battle system is flawed, but the Persona Fusion aspect, the social link aspect of the game, and even the quests you can complete for Elizabeth, as well as the plot when it's there, wish it was there more, but when it's there, do help compensate for the flawed battle system, and the fast pace of the battle system as well helps those things not stand out. The flaws in the battle system, I mean. I do say the game is worth playing if you're a JRPG fan, especially if you like the whole Pokemon gotta catch 'em all thing, because I mean this will really satisfy your OCD there. I mean there's just so many personas in the game, so many different options. Or if you're just looking for a darker plot than normal for a JRPG, it's not the darkest game I've seen. I mean, it's not Tales of Xillia 2. That one's really dark, but it's fairly dark. I mean, there's lighthearted moments, but they're few and far between. Although the humor that is in the game is very well done. So my overall score is a 7 out of 10. A good game, certainly. Definitely above average, definitely above a 5. So I'll give it a 7. It's not as good as Persona 4 Golden, though. And I believe the portable version I would probably rank higher. I never actually finished it, but they fixed a lot of the problems I'd have, so I'd probably give it a 7.5 or an 8 for the portable version. Although Persona 4, I would give like an 8.5 out of 10. And then the golden version of that game would probably get a 9.5 out of 10. I mean, that fixes almost every problem I have with Persona 3 and Persona 4. But I would definitely recommend the game. I think it's an excellent game. Well, a good game at least. I don't, it's not the best game ever or anything, but it's definitely a very good game to add to your JRPG collection for the PlayStation 2. So I think that's everything I wanted to cover here. So I'll be getting to the answer at some point when I can get around to it. And, when I can force myself to get around to it. And after that, I'll get to Summoner. And then I don't know what I'll get to, but I'll figure it out. I'm leaning towards Eternal Sonata instead of Grandia, but I'll have to think about it. So this is Ryzen. Thanks for watching this review. Take care, everyone. Oh, and I almost forgot. The 7 out of 10 only refers to the journey. The answer I am reviewing separately, and that is going to get a very crappy score. If I were to combine the two together, it would bring down the whole Persona 3 FES package down to a 6. Just so you know. Alright. Take care, everyone.